Today, as we celebrate the first quarter moon and commemorate the path of the Via Creativa, we're going to talk about something that is a regular topic on our channel: creating sacred space, whether that's in your community, in your life, or the altars and shrines that you have in your home. So let's have a chat as we walk down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a non-binary Christopagan Druid. I am joined by my husband, Brian.
Hello.
Who is also a Christopagan Druid. As we're talking about this dream of an oak church, this call to a new Christopaganry, this call to a Christopagan Druidry, we really should contextualize that in how we are building that sacred space in our lives. I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding of Druidry. Yes, going out into the woods is a great thing to do. Yes, going out and being with the trees is a wonderful thing to do. Touching grass is healthy for us as human beings. But many of us these days live in cities. And just because you live in a city or have an urban life doesn't mean that you can't be a druid. Also, if you're disabled, like I can't hike like I used to. I used to spend hours just walking around in the woods, climbing hills and going through the gullies. When I was a child, I didn't see a tree I didn't want to climb, and climbed many of the trees that I did come upon just for the challenge of it. But my knees are bad. My back is bad. I can't walk for an extremely long period of time anymore. So I can't go out in nature. Not the way I used to. In a lot of ways, not the way I would really like to. That doesn't stop me from connecting to the spirits of the land and with all of the wonderful world that we find within Druidry. When we're talking about creating a sacred space, we often use the analogy of the grove. This could be a literal grove of trees. If you are lucky enough to have a grove, an actual grove that you can go and visit and do your ritual work in, consider yourself blessed. That is a wonderful thing and a great blessing for you and those that you go there with. But you don't have to actually visit a forest to be in the grove. This is one of the reasons why in our Hollisted podcast, we are doing a series of guided meditations to take you into the interior grove, the place within you in that imaginal safe space within your own mind where you can be amongst the trees, even when you're maybe in the middle of a great city with nothing green in vision. But there are a lot of ways that we can bring that connection to nature into our lives. I really think we should focus on that for a bit.
Definitely. A fun little side story about having a grove around. If you happen to have an amount of property that could fit trees, you can plant one. Not that hard to plant a grove. You plant the trees, and it's mostly just patience, making sure it fits into the environment you're in. For instance, here where we live, it is hot. It's very wet and humid, so it's very good for trees. Doesn't matter if the trees drink up a lot of water because there's plenty of it around. And the shade that they would provide would help to cool the yard. I remember when we first moved in, I wanted to plant some trees in the yard to help create some shade. I spaced them out so that I could put a car underneath of them because I was planning on waxing the car, which is hilarious because I don't actually wash or wax the car that often. But at the time I thought this would be a good idea. I'll create a space where I could park the car so when I wax it, it's not sitting in the direct sunlight, and the trees will eventually grow up. So I measured it out and spaced it out nicely, and I made sure they were the appropriate distance from the road. Plus I thought with the way sometimes people drive up and down this road, a tree shield might be a nice thing because I think about all kinds of crazy things when I think about stuff. But now it turns out we have a grove in the yard. It grew into one, and it created a nice sacred space. It's a nice little grove that we can go into, and the car never really gets into it, but the people do, and we still enjoy it. And it also creates nice shade and cooling. Also, with creating sacred spaces, you can do this on a daily basis. The part of that creating a sacred space is that prep. Once again, coming from that culinary background, the prep work, it's about setting up. When you're about to embark in a task, especially a task that you're going to be at for a longer period of time, it's really great to set it up, to create, you're basically creating a sacred space for you to work in. And, and it really helps the creative process and makes the workflow a lot easier and better. And so I find myself creating a sacred space around my work desk, and I create sacred spaces in the kitchen, and I create say most places where I go where I'm going to be in it for more than a couple hours. I will set it up and try to create it into a sacred space. Since everything I do, I try to do as sacred work. If for nothing else, it just helps me to be more attentive to what I'm doing and with more intention.
This is important for us to remember that even in the city, the spirits didn't necessarily leave. One, from the point of view of Irish paganism, some spirits are tied to the land. They are literally tied to the land. They are part of the land. They are the living embodiment, the energy of the land, and those spirits will always be there. I find myself thinking a lot about the spirits of the rivers and what happens when a river is dammed or when a river dries up for various reasons. What happens to that spirit? Is that spirit still there? And that is a good question for us to think about when we're in an urban environment where many times rivers have been paved over and made into roads and foundations for housing and whatnot. What happened to the spirits of the land? What happened to the spirits of the rivers that were there?
I feel like from my experience that a lot of them get anxious at first and then they go dormant, inactive, kind of like the river itself going inactive, but they're never gone because those rivers are never gone. For instance, in Oklahoma with the tornadoes and stuff that were traveling certain specific paths, and then they noticed they were traveling down dried up riverbeds. Those riverbeds are still there. I wonder right now in northern Africa, with all the rain they're getting in the desert, there's a good chance that water's going to end up in some of those old dried up riverbeds, and not only riverbeds, but there was a giant lake out there, and I'm wondering if that's going to suddenly have water in the bottom of it, at least for a little while. And I hope nobody had settled in that space because it's going to become active again.
We've been obsessing about the monsoons that are hitting the Sahara right now.
Yeah, but on that note, a fun side story. When there was some construction going on near the house, they had put up the little, I guess you call it fencing. It's just to help keep from sediment and stuff going into it. But they also had a lot of equipment, a lot of activity was going on around it. And we noticed a spirit was wandering around. We called him Swampy. And it was the spirit of that pond that was very agitated by that.
It's funny because a lot of our friends kept seeing it.
Yeah, it wasn't.
There was one friend in particular that first drew our attention to it because she was sitting on the couch facing the window and she screamed because somebody was looking in the window. And we're like, there's no chance somebody's looking in the window. We've got rose bushes, thorny rose bushes right in front of the windows. There's no way. So we looked down and we're like, huh, what's that? We do see eyes there. And it was a very energetic and energized spirit that almost every visitor to the house had some experience with.
Once the construction was done and everything went back to its natural state and wasn't so disturbed, the Swampy had calmed down and was comfortable again. But at first it was like they were coming around going, hey, help, something's going on, I don't understand. It was a very interesting experience.
The first altar that I would recommend that you have in your house, the first sacred space, the easiest one, I think, to get up and running with and to start seeing how it affects your home. We really do feel that spiritual practices, magical practices, need to be rooted in practical experience. If you don't see a benefit from a practice, that practice may not be for you, and maybe you shouldn't continue it. But everyone that we know that has built a little place, set aside a little place. Remember, sacred only means set aside.
Yeah.
So it could be a part of a bookshelf. It could be part of a table. We have part of our entertainment center on the top set up as several altars, actually. But that's setting up an altar to the house spirits because we all have them. They're all there. The folklore is very clear about how mischievous they are. You can tell that they're not happy with you when you start losing things. Things just start vanishing all the time. Making little offerings to the house spirits. Now, depending on the tradition that you're coming from, that could be different things. In the Irish tradition, the offerings are generally milk, butter, bread, something of that nature. We found that our house spirits love a ginger tea that we make every night. Every night, as part of our wind down, we make a ginger tea. We noticed this kind of energy in the air when we made it, this almost anticipation in the air. One night, I mentioned, why don't we put out a special cup just for the house spirits and see if they want something like this. And we had been having a whole bunch of bug problems. All kinds of bugs and creepy crawlies had been getting into the house because we kind of live out in the country a little bit. And, bugs and mice are
All
not.
this land used to be swamp.
Yeah. Bugs and mice are not unusual around here. We poured a little bit of the tea in a cup for them. We made it just like a cup of tea that we would drink. And we put it up in a special place that we set aside just for them. And we said a little prayer that this is for the house spirits in gratitude for all that you do in making our lives easier. And thank you for letting us live here. Over the next week, our bug problem started going away. The ants just weren't as obvious. I'm not going to say that they completely went away. I don't know. They may just be in the walls and not coming out into the living quarters now, but some of the other bugs vanished. And we started noticing this tangible thing. We also noticed an energy in the air change when we made the offering, this kind of gratitude, this excitement, this exuberance in the air. This has become part of our regular daily practice. Every night when we have tea, we pour a special cup for them and we put it over on the altar. And they have tea when we have tea. We have noticed that things that we had lost a long time ago, we've started finding in strange places, like places we'd looked at 100 times, sometimes sitting right out in the middle of our desks where there's no way it could have been there because that's where I keep my cup when I'm sitting at the desk, because the house spirits do want to be helpful. They do want to be involved. They do want to be part of the life and your life, and they want you to acknowledge that they're there. We're sharing space with them. And so it's a very simple practice that you can get started with. It will vary. I don't believe in prescribed ritual offerings. I feel from my own experience, your connection with the spirits that you are having time with will indicate what it is that you want to offer. If you have a special beverage every morning or every night, maybe that is the offering that you want to share with them. Just take a moment, become mindful. Feel if you feel this anticipation when you're pouring that beverage that doesn't seem to be your anticipation for drinking it, but something a little bit, when you're in a room with a bunch of kids and you're making cookies and you can kind of feel that feeling in the air. It's kind of that sensation. And if you feel that, maybe make a little offering. Maybe if you have a certain snack every day, a couple pieces of popcorn, some nuts, or what have you. Whatever is meaningful to you, because this is, I think, the most important thing with offerings in a sacred space is that they should be meaningful. They should mean something to you and not just be something that you do out of rote or because somebody told you. But I do think most sacred spaces do have some kind of offering associated with them, whether that's lighting a candle, lighting some incense, various votive items that you put there, maybe your prayer beads, an image of the saint, guide, guardian, or god that you're dedicating that area to, a statue of them. There is an offering aspect to almost every sacred space that you set up.
Even if, say, for instance, you like fresh flowers, if you're already putting out fresh flowers every week or every couple of days or so, and it's just something you already do, part of that relationship building is making it special. You can make anything special by just making it special. So those flowers, then, if you share them, that becomes a relationship building activity and makes it special. Even though you're technically cutting the same flowers you would have cut and you're putting them into the same vase in the same space, but you can then make that a sacred space where that space is now not only for your edification, it could be for the edification of the household and for peace of mind and just enjoyment. And you can also offer it up to the house spirits as well, who are also in that space. It's just a simple mindful act It does require mindfulness, but it's just a simple change in perspective. And it's a huge change, though. It's just like when you're building a relationship with somebody, you can bring them flowers every week. If you're doing it just out of rote, then it loses its specialness. Even though it's the same act, you're still giving them a flower every week. If you're doing it as a relationship building thing, as a gift to the other person, then yes, it's special.
All magic in Druidry is relational. Everything we do in Druidry is relational. And that goes for sacred spaces as well. That's why we said we're talking about sacred spaces and we start talking about offerings. Because a sacred space is a place where you are establishing your relationship with something. It could be a tree that you find a special draw to. And so maybe find out what kind of fertilizers that tree needs, what minerals, what elements would help it to grow better, and maybe bring something that has that to leave at its roots and establish that relationship that way. Maybe your sacred space is your garden, and tending it is that offering that you are doing to your garden or to your plants that you have in the house. Sacred spaces are not just a place that is set aside. They are the space that is dedicated to a relationship. And so they should, in as many ways that are personal to you, connect you to that relationship and remind you of it and be the place where you practice it. That place where you go and you set aside, here's where I'm going to have my relationship with this thing. Here's where I'm going to demonstrate my relationship with this thing. And I'm using thing here because sometimes your relationship is with the land. Sometimes it's with the house. Sometimes it's with a particular spirit. Sometimes it's with our ancestors. We have a prosperity altar in our house. And we've talked about this before. And it is covered in Ganeshas. This is because of a relationship that has developed over time between us and Ganesh. It is Ganeshas keep finding their way into my life. I've never bought anything related to Lord Ganesh, but people keep giving them to me. And it makes sense. And I understand this as part of my relationship with him. There he is. We have two statues and a beautiful picture of him right there. I am not a Hindu. I do not practice Hinduism. And thus, my relationship with Ganesh is different. Ganesh is treated in the same way that I would treat any of the guides, gods, and guardians that I interact with in my Druidry. I've told it on the podcast before. If you want, we can talk about it again. We talked about it a lot in the Bieltana live stream on the YouTube channel. If you really want to hear the story of how I connected with Ganesh, and as well as Glory tells her story about how she connected with Ganesh on there as well, go check out over on our YouTube channel the Bieltana live stream from this year. This is where we have relationship. It's special in that way. One way that might help you conceive of a sacred space is maybe you and your friends have a special diner you like to go to, a restaurant, a cafe that you like to hang out at, a park that you like to go visit. That is a sacred space for that friendship. Whether you realize that in your mind or not, that's what that is. That is a sacred space for that relationship. That's what these altars are. These sacred spaces are that we set up around our house and throughout our lives. These are those favored places that we go to build that relationship. So you might want to ask yourself, who, what do you want to spend your time making relations with? If you're an artist, this may be your paintbrush. Your paintbrushes and easels. Remember, I'm an animist, and I encourage people to realize that there is a spirit, there's a life in all things, that God can, in fact, be found in all things. So if you're a painter, what is your relationship with your brushes, your palette knife, your palette, your easel, whatever you use for your art? If you're a writer, what's your relationship with your laptop, your desk, the place that you write and the tools you use to write with? That is a sacred space for you. And part of developing the truth that we are developing within ourselves in Druidry, this relationship to the fearing, the truth of all things, is understanding the sacredness of those relationships. Are you a chef? What is your relationship with your knives? Because I know you're a chef. Every chef has their special knife or knives that are just for them. Every chef I know has at least one, if not a whole collection.
The even deeper secret is the spoon and fork. Usually, although oftentimes now chopsticks instead of fork or both. The knives are flashy, they're obvious. Sometimes tongs also, but I think that's become like a dirtier secret. Like chefs don't like to admit that they have their favorite tongs. They're not really kept in the bag, but most of them like to have them around and handy.
But what is your relationship with them? How is
Yeah,
that a sacred space for you? If you're a baker, how is your relationship with your oven or your bread maker or however you do your baking? If you crochet or knit, your needles, your yarn, the space that you do that in are probably your sacred space. See, we get trapped in this very Protestant understanding of sacred spaces, this very Catholic imperial
yeah.
church idea of a sacred space is this church building. It is this place completely devoid of life except for when we go there to perform rituals.
In a way that also translates over where a lot of times artists feel like they have to have a studio, they have to have their temple. It's not a bad thing to have that sacred space set up, but you don't have to have that. You can, as long as you're creating the sacred space, like it can be wherever you've drawn out, marked out that space, wherever you've prepared it. I think that's one of the other things that often gets forgotten as well is it's an ongoing process. You're constantly having to bless, to prepare, where you have to sanctify that space constantly, over and over again. It's back to those keys we talked about yesterday. Because all life is impermanent, that you'll have to continually renew that space. And that's okay.
It doesn't have to be a big space. When I suffer from nightmares, and I have for a very long time, and a friend of mine recommended that maybe I should try to have a relationship with Lilith, because in the Judaism that her family practiced, which came from Ukraine, they taught that Lilith kept the nightmares away. And I was like, that's interesting. So I got myself a beautiful portrait of Lilith that hangs on the wall between me and the bedroom. And this is my sacred space with me and Lilith. Even when I have to sleep in the living room because of my back, it's right where I can see it. It's the last thing I see before I close my eyes, whether it's me going back to the bedroom or if I'm sleeping in the living room. That is my sacred space with her. I will say a prayer. I will talk to it sometimes when I can't sleep and have conversation. It's just a picture on the wall. That can be what your sacred space is, depending on what your needs are and what your relationship is with these spirits, these guides, these guardians, these gods that we're bringing into our lives. They don't have to be these elaborate, ornate altars. They're beautiful when we see them on Witch Talk or on YouTube or where on Instagram. These beautiful, beautiful altars. And all I can think every time I see them is no one uses that altar, or they just cleaned it, because altars are messy places. You're making your offerings there. There's ashes from incense that has to be cleaned up all the time, and used candles and sometimes candle wax because candles don't always behave the way that you want them to. And there's all of this cleaning, that these pristine, beautiful altars, they look like that and then they get used and then you clean them and they look like that again. Ask yourself, where are you building sacred space? Where have you built sacred space? I would love to know about the altars and the sacred spaces that you have in your life. You can always leave us a comment about that. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there where you're listening to us. If you're listening to us anywhere else, you can head over to creationspaths.com, click on the chat. In there, you can let us know, where are your sacred spaces? Where are you building these things in your life? And you don't have to share anything too personal. That's not what we're looking for. I love seeing people's altars. I love hearing about how people do sacred space, because none of us do it exactly the same way. I have, for my writing, a statue of Ptah and a beautiful statue of a dragon that are there for my muses, and they're part of my writing process. They're part of my creativity altar. That's, I don't know a lot of other writers that do that. So what are yours? Let us know. I would love to hear from you about that. If you have any other questions about sacred spaces, altars, offerings, or anything, you can leave us a comment in the same places and we'll get to answering them. We have some answers to questions coming up in episodes that we have scheduled. And thank you for those of you who are asking those questions. One of my highlights of my day is getting up every morning and responding to your comments. I thoroughly enjoy it. Thank you so much for that. If you can help us in other ways, it would be great if you could help share the episodes that you really enjoy, let other people know about what we're doing. Find communities if you're a member of that might resonate with what we're doing and share our work there. It really does help us to grow and get the word out. And if you have a few dollars that you can throw our way, you can either support us over at creationspaths.com by joining a membership over there, or through supporting us on Patreon or Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both. CEDORSETT. And like I like to say, that is not a donation to the Lord. We really feel like there isn't a lot of Christopagan content out in the world. We really want to be providing this for you all. We're making the podcasts we wished we had found for ourselves. And since we didn't find them, we're just making them. That's why we're doing the three. We're doing Creation's Past, the Hollowstead, and the Church of the Oak, because these are the podcasts we wished we could find and listen to. So since we couldn't, we're making them ourselves. And we'd like this to be our full-time job, and we can only do that with your support. And thank you to everybody who already is supporting us. It really does mean a lot. But if you don't have any money, don't worry about it. Sharing and helping us grow, also, that is a huge help. And thank you to everybody who's doing that as well. All right. Until next time, may you go to your sacred space and there meet the one life flowing in through all of your guides, guardians, and gods, and all those things that give your life meaning, so that you will know that you are truly connected in the infinite weave of life. Amen.
Amen.